So I make that 11 minutes. Hello, talented people. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you ever so much for looking out for our next session, which is this. So as a lot of you will know, we are a staffing company and headhunters, and we work with lots of the best companies and organizations to match you guys, the best freelancers out there, to the most exciting jobs. And we've been doing these live sessions for, I can't really believe it, for about six or 7 weeks now. They've been a highlight of my week. Everybody's been really enjoying them, and we aim to just keep them really informal. It's just a really nice chat to keep you guys connected with the industry, to join in and ask questions. So please do ask questions in the comments, and we will get to them as soon as we can. And today we're going to be chatting about diversity and flexible working and all those sorts of ways in which our working now is currently changing or changed post coronavirus. So we are joined today by Ramy, El-Bergamy. Hey Ramy, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. And Emma Taylor-Hill. Hello.
Oh.
Emma, oh, she's frozen already. Well, she'll come back. So Ramy is a head of development based in Glasgow, aren't you?
I am, yes.
And yes, development at the moment, but has been Channel 4 diversity exec previously and commissioning editor, and then tons of casting in your background too. And Emma is a series editor who is freelance, and she's done brilliant, well-known series like Gordon, Gino and Fred and Harry's Heroes and Little Big Shots. So lots of formats and sort of doc series for all the major broadcasters. And she has 2 small humans in her life and a DOP husband who make the juggle of work and life pretty challenging. So how are you both anyway? Ramy, what's the situation with you? How are you coping currently? Are you working?
No, so we've all been furloughed at work. So yeah, it's a funny old time for everyone, really, isn't it? So we've been furloughed, so I'm trying to sort of keep busy by sort of getting the dogs not to attack each other and just taking them out for walks and trying to.
Are you on your own in your place?
Yeah. So
how are you finding that? Being, telly is notoriously social.
It's very tricky, actually. I think last week was especially tough. It's not being able to sort of look forward to anything that I'm finding quite difficult. Not even go for dinner or looking forward to a holiday you've booked in 4 months' time or whatever. But last week was the hardest of all the weeks. But yeah, sort of good days and bad days, and everyone, I imagine.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to that point where it really does feel like a long time now, doesn't it? Emma, You were sort of nodding away.
Yeah, last week was pretty bad, I think. This last kind of 10 days or so, I've really struggled. I've actually weirdly quite enjoyed the first month in a way, being forced a bit home with the kids, and juggle work and do it all. No, sometimes. It was. It's been kind of. At first, it was sort of all right, and we're very good in TV with taking a situation and making the best of it, and kind of, okay, cool, right, fine, this is what we'll do, and this is the plan, and this is how we'll make it work, and we're really good at that. But once that's sort of worn off, and that adrenaline of that's worn off, I think that's hit this last couple of weeks, and I'm lonely. It's like it's lovely having a husband, it's lovely having the children, but I really miss my colleagues, and I miss working, and I miss my friends and my family.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not the same. This setup, this Zoom thing, it's great, but the novelty's worn off.
Yeah, I know. You're on it all day, and then you're also watching quite a lot of telly at night with these windows, and they're wondering when it's all going to return to some sort of normality. But at the same time, being torn and thinking, actually, on Sunday, I don't know what I want the announcement to be. because we've kind of got used to this controlled bubble. But there we go. That's a whole nother conversation. But let's chat about how you guys are currently set up to work sort of under usual circumstances then. So Ramy, you are in the regions, well, in the nations, you're in Glasgow. What's your experience been in your telly career then when it comes to both, being in this sort of newly push for regions and nations? In fact, sorry, let me reword that. Did you move up to Scotland because that's where opportunity was? And how has your kind of career come to this point?
So yeah, to an extent. I think I moved up to Glasgow I think Glasgow's a really cool city anyway, and it just felt there was definitely this feeling that there was a lot of stuff coming out of Glasgow, and it was just me and the dog, so it kind of made sense to kind of up sticks and see what was beyond sort of M25. So I was quite happy to move up here and work here, to be honest. And there is a really good community of really talented people up in Scotland and sort of regions around, especially because when I was at Channel 4 in daytime, something, I can't remember the exact figure, but over sort of 65% of the stuff that came out of Channel 4 daytime came out of the nations and regions. So there was a real sense that, there is a real wealth of talent that can be making good, strong, returnable series. So it just kind of made sense. And I think there's definitely this, Channel 4 have opened up an office here, a hub rather. I mean, they've always had an office here, but they've opened up a hub with sort of, Deborah Dunnett is an amazing talent, and she's a commissioner now, and she really understands the Scottish landscape in a way that few others do. So it just felt like it had a buzz about it, and it definitely just felt like the right time to sort of move north.
Yeah. And do you feel that, you are in a good place right now then? Are you going to stay in Scotland, or are you thinking that actually this sort of setup currently has opened our minds to being able to work from anywhere?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I want to stay in Scotland, but the TV landscape has changed overnight. I think we all know that it felt like it just collapsed sort of overnight. You can't make anything. Advertising revenue's down. My concern, I suppose, is when we all sort of come to it again, that you'll have, instead of 5 people going for one job, you'll have 35 people going for one job, and that for me is sort of the long-term concern is really troubling for me. There's a lot of small and mid-sized companies that I don't think will make it through, unfortunately, as well. On top of that, I think we're so used to informal hiring practices in television that you'll come back to this world where it's just mates hiring their mates, and that really concerns me. And I think companies, I mean, we've seen evidence. So I've got a really good friend called Adil Amini, who's doing amazing stuff with sort of TV Mindset, I think it's called. And he's really championing this sort of stuff. And we should all be kind of unionizing in a way, because I'm really concerned about companies offering, some people less than minimum wage to be doing, producer level jobs. And that is also a concern of mine.
It's unacceptable. And actually, we've had a lot of freelancers ask us for the few jobs that are, on our books at the moment that we are working on, what rate should I ask? Because I realise, it's, should I drop it? And, our advice is that, if things are still getting commissioned, okay, I understand the budgets aren't what they are, but don't get taken the mick out of. They still have a line in the budget for your role. So ask for what you're worth and then see. And it's up to you how negotiable you are, but don't be ridiculous. I mean, Emma, what's your situation? Are you working at the moment?
Ironic. I was. I've worked all the way through the pandemic until this week. So I was given notice. The production's shut down. It's a terrible shame. It was for a US service on demand show, and I think the parent company in the US just decided that they didn't know how they were going to go into studio with a load of children to make the series, and so that shut down on Monday with a couple of we've got notice, and the company have been amazing. I have to say, wall to wall, have been absolutely brilliant and looked after everybody. And the production kept going as long as it possibly could. So I've been lucky, to work right up until fairly recently. It's been really interesting to do 6-7 weeks in the new world and to work everybody working remotely, casting a show. And we were mid the mental bit of production just before you go into studio. And I think if you'd asked me before of this, if you could have done it remotely, I would have probably said no, even though I'm a massive campaigner of flexibility in the workplace. I wouldn't believe that your entire team could work separately and still produce the kind of results we were producing. It can be done. I still think it's definitely not a permanent solution, and lots of things fall through the cracks, and it makes a lot of things a lot harder, but it can be done. So yeah, unfortunately at the moment, not working as of yesterday.
Those are interesting points though. So Ramy, you were saying that you're worried about, once everything does kick off again, hopefully soon, then people will just be hiring their mates. And actually I came to this wondering if perhaps it would be much more open-minded in that, oh look, actually there's such a wealth of talent across the country, and people with, you know, all sorts of backgrounds and circumstances, whether that is caring responsibilities for children or otherwise, or, you know, whether that is a disability and that means they don't usually or can't come into the office. You know, perhaps that would mean actually our hiring practices would be much broader and better and more exciting. But you're saying perhaps actually people are just going to go straight for their mates still.
I think if you sort of look over the last 5-10 years of television and the way that these informal hiring practices have taken place, it's taken a long time to just even get to a stage of, you know, diversity quotas, for example, and it's taken far too long to even get there. And because of this sort of pandemic, I just get the sense that people have very short-term memories, and once we go back to some sort of normality, it will just be the same old hiring practices that we've seen, that we've been trying to kind of break for years. Because especially for diverse people, you know, it's hard for everyone. But if you look at the sort of people who are diverse at work in television, they drop out at a far higher rate than the sort of white counterparts. And that's just statistical fact. And I think when stuff like this happens, you know, we feel vulnerable enough. But then then add to that this sense that God knows when I'll next be working, then you kind of multiply that by 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And I'd like to think that, you know, obviously what is great about this is, like you've both said, you know, there are, you know, if you have parental responsibilities, it's shown that you can work from home. If you're disabled, you don't have to come into the office. But in the sort of short to medium term, I think those informal hiring practices of just sort of, you know, bunging your mates will come to the fore again. I genuinely, and that concerns me.
It'd be interesting to hear how you guys all feel about that. You know, leave a question or a remark in the comments, and we'll have a look through, see how you're feeling about, you know, when things all come back and, you know, you're applying for work. Emma, tell us about your career in you know, in terms of, we met a long time ago, didn't we, on Wife Swap many years ago, and then we both did the sort of, you know, the PD route, and then you now series editing, and obviously had kids in the interim. How have you managed that juggle, especially with a partner who's also in the same industry, and how do you feel things have changed, if they have, besides coronavirus?
Okay. I've had this kind of weird career where I've sort of done entertainment and factual entertainment side by side for a long time, with a bit of quiz show and stuff sort of thrown into the mix. I've been really lucky, and I like that diversity. I like to keep it broad, and I really enjoy all those genres. I want to carry on doing so if I can. I think you bring a lot to the mix if you have both of those things under your, you know, kind of under your belt. A lot of broadcasters don't see it that way, but I'm really passionate about that kind of breadth in the CV, and I look for it actually when I'm employing people. I think it's a really healthy thing. So I've kind of gone between studio shows and location, a lot of location stuff. I've worked abroad a lot. Made a lot in Argentina and South Africa, and places like that, which has been amazing. Then I had children, and suddenly those jobs obviously were not as easy to accept. You know, 6-8 weeks away isn't ideal when you have young kids, especially when your husband's a DOP and isn't around. Currently today, not around, doing the E-Day celebration filming, which only came in a couple of days ago. So it's a real juggle. It can be really difficult, but we in television are brilliant at finding solutions to things. We're brilliant at reaching out, finding people to help us, creating networks around ourselves to kind of make these things work, working for the right people so that people make sure that they are understanding of what you do. And I think in the end, we have made it work. We've paid through the nose for very, very good childcare. I've had a nanny since the children were really little, since my little boy, so 6 years she's been with us. And that's really, really helped. But that's not a cheap solution. And it's very expensive. It's like having private school fees. You know, it's a big expense, but it's worth it. It's short term, and it was worth it. Now they're at school, you know, it's got a bit hard. It's got a bit harder in that respect. But, you know, I think I don't know, I was thinking about what flexible working is kind of this zeitgeist thing that everyone talks about, and it's this new thing that everyone's really excited about. And I'm like, I've been in TV 20 years. There has always been flexible working. It's just the balance of power has always been with the employer. We've always been asked to be flexible. We've always been asked to work on Sundays and work at weekends and work at early hours of the morning and late at night, and kind of
that's
fit
a
our
very
lives
interesting
around.
point. Yeah. But so it needs to work the other way around now.
It needs to come back the other way, and I think it is. I have to say, I really do. I think it is. I think employers are becoming so much more receptive to it, and I think it has got better. The landscape has got better for that. People are becoming a lot more sensitive.
It takes an amount of confidence, though, doesn't it? I mean, I imagine when you first went back to work when the children or your first child was very small, as I did, I found it quite hard to say, I need to leave at 5. With that face, like I need to, do you mind if? I'll obviously be online later, nodding, smiling, and it's awkward. How did you manage that?
I think I went back to a boss. The first job I did actually, ironically, was in Argentina when my child was 5 months old. But I think you have to own it, actually. I think a lot of what we do in television, we put a face on and we pretend to be someone we're not a lot of the time to get the job done. And some of that, it comes into play here. And I think you have to, if you do something enough and you own it enough and you walk out with a smile on your face and confidence and kind of own it, eventually you start to believe in that. And I think it's right. The decision you're making is right. You're leaving at 5 to pick up your kid or whatever it happens to be, or to care for your elderly parents, or to go and help. This isn't just about a parenting thing. This is about people having lives outside of TV. Absolutely. And the technology that we have available to us now allows us to be able to do that, and owning that, but also being fair at the same time, being utterly fair to the employer and your team, because absentee, being not there in the office, it does have an impact, and you need to understand the impact that has on everybody.
Yes.
And so both ways.
Ramy, how do you feel about the work-life balance? I'm sure you've been in a lot of situations where that has become a big topic of conversation.
Yeah, I think I don't ever feel that people should apologise for leaving work on time. Truth be told, it's a very odd thing to be having to feel guilty for taking even half an hour's lunch just to go for a walk and get some fresh air. And it's a very and this whole sort of thinking of, well, it's always been that way in telly, therefore that's how it is and just deal with it. Well, that tells me one of two things. That tells me you're not managing your workload properly, or more than likely you've not got enough staff on your production, because there's no way that you should be working every hour that God sends for a 6-week contract, for example. And I just think there's a difference between sort of realizing that work needs to be done and just doing extra just for the sake of it because you want to try and get ahead. And that's always been an odd relationship that I've had with work. It doesn't mean you're lazy because you want to go home at a reasonable hour and spend time, just even if you haven't got a family, you just don't want to be, you don't want to be working Saturday and Sunday mentally. You kind of need downtime because there is more to life than work generally. And I just think, so that's a really odd relationship, but you have to be, but it takes a lot of guts to walk out of an office at 6 o'clock when everyone else is still on their computers. It's not easy.
It's mad, isn't it? Because what other industry does that happen? Does that guilt factor happen? I don't know. So how would you say that how can people achieve that? It's all very well us saying you just need to walk out and be confident. How can we help people who are watching and going, I know what you're saying, but I feel I can't? What sort of tips and advice can we give people to do that? Is it just about being open and honest, perhaps?
I think so. I think so. I think it's about saying, I'm off to the cinema at 7 o'clock, so I need to go home and eat before I go out, or I've got a dinner reservation, or I understand that a night before studio, inevitably you're going to be in the office till sort of 8, 9, 10 p.m. I get that. But there comes a point where it's like people are just being seen to work for the sake of working, just to get ahead. And that kind of competitiveness has always sat uneasy with me, because you can be fiercely ambitious, but at the same time want to do stuff out of the office. And I think there needs to be that balance. But again, I worry post-COVID, because it's going to be all hands on deck, isn't it? It's all going to be more hours, less staff, less salaries. And I know it sounds all doom and gloom, but I think all the progress we've made over the years, I feel like we're kind of sort of tracking back now, because there will be the openness of excuses. Well, the budgets aren't there because of COVID. We can't pay you what you want because of COVID. You have to work more hours because of COVID, and that for me sits uneasy.
Is a concern. I see what you mean there. Emma, how do you feel about how things might be different when, as and when you get your next contract? Will anything have changed for you in the way that you work?
I probably not. I thought, like, I think as an employer, because obviously as a series producer, series editor, you're doing both. You're an employee of your company, you're beholden to the network, but you're also an employer. You're basically looking after and managing your team. I think I worry about what the landscape looks like after this whole incident, in the same way that I think we all are. I do think some positives will come out of it. I think the remote working thing will become easier. The ability to be able to say, I'm doing this day from home and I'm organising, that will become easier and better. But as you say, the rates thing worries me. The fundamental thing for me will be about, I think, broadcasters maybe adjusting their expectations of what things look like. If budgets have to be slashed, we all know that that's going to have to happen for a while, for a period, maybe hopefully recover, in a set period of time, but certainly for the next 6 months to a year, things are going to look pretty different. Programs can still be made, TV can still be made on much smaller budgets than they were being made before, but not to the same standard level or level of what was demanded from people. No, it can't be. We can't be filming 90 hours of television in order to make 30 minutes. We can't, I know that ratio is slightly out, exaggerated.
Yeah.
But that won't be.
We'll have to be more efficient. Yeah.
We're going to have to be more efficient. We're going to have to be more decisive up front about what we make and how we make it.
And none of those are bad things, are they? That maybe it'll stop everyone messing around or having 17 viewings for the same cut.
They are good things. They are good things that could come out of it. And if people can hold their ground on that, it'll be about the relationships, I think, between production companies and the broadcasters in order to make sure that what's in development can be made for the money that they're being talked about, and that the sales exercise, that it doesn't fall down between development and then production when you get handed something that you simply can't make for the money that's been agreed.
Yeah,
that structure is going to have to change, and if that changes, we will all still make TV, because their content will be, they're craving content and we need content. It's just about how we now make it.
Yes.
There's the
Hi, Nat.
the DOP husband.
Hello.
That can work. It'll just be about how we make it. We
still need to see what everybody is desperate to watch, great stuff that isn't in Zoom squares as well. So people are going to have to get creative, like you say. I'm looking through some comments, which we're going to come to in a minute. Ramy, do you think development could work well from home, though? For example, for people who are kind of trying to build teams that are I don't know, whether people either don't want to come in or can do part-time hours. Can you see that as something that comes out of this?
Yeah, potentially. I think it's a double-edged sword, really, because I think what's great about development is if you have a team of 2 or 3 or 4, you need to feel like you're in the same room and you can all sort of bounce ideas off each other. But there's definitely something to be said. We have such good technology. You can write, Canva is a really good website for writing treatments, and all you need is internet access for that. So there is really, there's something to be said for working remotely in development. I do think there needs to be a sense of everyone in the room and bouncing ideas off each other, because I think that's how you make good development. It's not just my idea is right, put it committed to paper, get it out. So it's a bit of both, but yeah, you can absolutely do part-time development from home. I don't see why you couldn't, especially these days.
Yeah, okay. Right, let me have a look at some of these comments. So Michelle Reynolds, hello Michelle, loving the share my telly job. She's saying that flexible working and job sharing is the key to retaining experienced talent with caring commitments, elderly parents, children, or people with illness, disability, poor mental health, or even just the people who just want to get a life. as you say, Ramy, it's not necessarily about other commitments either, is it? It's about, I love my job, but actually I will have other things in my life that I'd like to do. So yes, that is very a very good point. And that she thinks that managers have to openly support people who work flexibly and challenge bias and myths that people who work flexibly are less committed. And I think that comes back round to your point exactly, Ramy, about that, trying to weigh up that the contradiction in your head that is, I know that I'm good at my job and that I'm ambitious, but I also want to leave. Is that okay? Does that mean I'm not? Is that constant challenge?
But also a lot of sort of unconscious bias plays into that, so again, statistically it's that sense that minorities have to sort of work twice as hard for half as much. So that comes into the factor as well, because we have to be seen to be doing a lot more than necessarily our white counterparts. So that also is quite damaging to the sort of dynamic of it all. But it's, I'm not gonna, it's like I've said, I don't think anyone should apologize for kind of wanting a life outside of work. I've never quite understood that kind of that thinking.
The mindset. No, and Toril has said hello. Toril Dixit, thank you for commenting, Toril. She says that BAME directors make just 2% of factual programs. She's quoted that from a source. As a result, the job insecurity in between jobs, even before the current crisis, makes BAME production staff much more vulnerable in these difficult times. And that you're right, Ramy, unconscious bias as well as nepotism make it a challenging arena, and that we'll see many people leave the industry.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I think I also worry, because the thing is with there aren't a lot of industries in the world where you can get hired for a 6-figure salary over a cup of coffee in Starbucks. And I think that kind of that sort of informal hiring is really counterproductive for trying to source new talent, especially. And that, Toril's absolutely right. I think, I mean, we feel vulnerable. Everyone feels vulnerable. We're all sort of in it together for once. But there is a sense that, if you're from a working class background, you can't afford to take 6 months off to find yourself in Bali. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, this isn't a time for me to be learning Italian and learning how to play the French horn. This is a time for me to start worrying about my bills. And I appreciate a lot of people are in the same positions, but I think sort of, if you look at the stats, if you are sort of socially immobile and you are from an ethnic minority background, what does this say to people trying to come into the industry now? I think I really worry about it.
And actually, on that note, Katerina has asked, do you believe that there'll be any opportunities post-coronavirus for students who'll be graduating this year and looking to start their careers in TV?
Yeah, what's amazing about all this, amazing is a strong word, but what's interesting about all this, I think, and I don't know if you guys agree, is that TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, there are ways to get your content out there in a way that, when we were starting out in telly, you just couldn't do. So I do think that there are those opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. I think there will be opportunities. I think like you guys have already said, it will sort of come in different guises, but there will definitely still be opportunities post-COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
There will, especially if budgets are driven, and I hate to say it, but if budgets are driven down and you need, 6 people to make a television program, they will have to relook at how the money's distributed. And, people that higher up the chain, probably like myself, are more expensive. And yes, our experience is valued and all of that sort of stuff. But actually, if you need volumes of people, there will probably be more opportunities for people potentially lower down the ladder, which should be seen as a good thing as well.
Yeah. And Emma, hi Emma Morgan. Do you Emma Morgan, who's commented already, do you see sort of relevant to that actually, do you see there being less demand for certain roles over the next year or so, like self shooters or camera crew, and perhaps that would mean that people could move sideways into slightly different jobs, which might be interesting. We all, pigeonholing is something actually that we all we talk about a lot. People look at your CV for 2 seconds, because hiring managers tend to have a attention span of a gnat, and they'll look and then move on. And if they don't see a very logical progression, then they see a lot of, food programming, they assume that you'll never be able to make something about wildlife or birds or anything factual entertainment. So actually, could perhaps with the landscape changing slightly, people be able to move across into slightly different jobs, do you think?
I really hope so, because I think it's actually been something that's fundamentally an issue in our business. I think the lack of, and it comes down to what Ramy was saying as well, in that people hire the people they know, people hire people that they are confident that they'll do the job, or just their friends. And I think that doesn't help that situation. People get pigeonholed. You know, if you know as you say, you're making a food program, you pick somebody who's made a food program for the last 5 years, without recognizing that someone else might bring something else to the party, and actually they could even be better at it because they're bringing something else to it and another perspective to it. I really hope that there will be kind of a bit more flexibility in it. I don't know. I don't. In the short term, I think probably not. I think in the short term, people will hire. It might get worse, as we say, but I like to think about it, you know, in a year's time, that might not be the case. Content will, they will suddenly want a demand for a lot more content. Those people might not be available to do that stuff. So I think hopefully it will open that up. I hope so. I really, really hope so.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we obviously see billions of CVs here, and it's our job to get to know them and really pick through them and work out, you know, what this person really is good at. And it's something we're very cautious about too. It's you know, sometimes if you do have something specialist, obviously you need to look for that on a CV, but we see people doing an assortment of contracts. As long as there's still longevity in those, and that they follow through, and that those are good solid projects, then it can only be a good thing. And it can mean that, you know, they can make they have transferable skills. Yeah, something in another industry that is highly rated, and perhaps not as much as it should be in our industry. Helen Chase, thank you for your comment. She says, Ramy, all your comments are spot on. This is quite a big question, but what's the way forward for diverse staff?
Wow, that's a great question. What is the way forward for diverse staff? I genuinely, I don't know, is the honest answer, because I don't think anyone knows we're all kind of sort of, it's a bit like farting in the wind. We all think we know what's going to happen, but, you know, who knows? You know, I think, like Emma said, it's sort of, in a year's time, I think the landscape will be very different to what it is in 3 months' time. But, you know, if you are, again, from a sort of working class background, you don't have a year to kind of, you know, assess your options. You kind of drop out of the industry and you find a full-time job that pays, you know, okay. So genuinely, for diverse stuff, I couldn't tell you, but it's an opportunity for everyone, really, to an extent, to kind of put their own content out there. We just got to keep pushing, and you know, but it's hard. I don't have the answers, unfortunately.
I think
unhelpful, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not unhelpful. I think it is helpful for other people to hear it from you, and to hear that other people are thinking the same as them. And whilst we've all got this element of positivity, like, we've got to find some positive stuff out of this. There's got to be, you know, things that we can take and make better going forward. Of course, we can only admit that right now it's really, really hard. You know, and most people are in the same boat, and that it is worrying that, you know, once everything kicks off, you know, there's a lot of people in a similar situation, and it may be harder for others, for some than others, and to get back in. Giotti Meta, hi Giotti. She says she spoke to a friend who works in top city finance jobs, and he said that they've made genuine strides in diversity by early stage applications, by striking out names, gender, ethnicity, and that based on this they decide who comes to interview, and apparently it's working. And he couldn't believe how informal our tele hiring processes can be, and that's something I know that has been a topic of, you know, amongst many talent managers and companies, about whether that is actually a way forward. You know, you'll look at the credits, look at the experience, don't look at the name, age, sex. You know, perhaps that is something going forward. I don't know. How do you feel about that, both of you? Emma as a hiring manager, and Ramy yourself.
Do you want to go first, Emma?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely embarrassed to actually think I've never even thought about doing that. I've never even considered it. And it's a really clever, good idea. I think at the moment it's difficult because we're trying to obviously positively discriminate as well, because we feel that we need to change the, you know, the diversity within the industry. So we are trying to encourage people to come into jobs, certainly at you know, at all levels, really. So I think it then makes that very difficult because if you've only got a small percentage of people that are coming in from diverse backgrounds, from disability, etc., then how are you going to make sure that they are nurtured and looked after through the process? So I think we're not yet at the point where we can sit there and go, we can blank that out and just hire purely on credits. We're not there yet. I hope we will be. I really hope, with everything that everybody is trying to do, that we will get to a point where it's irrelevant. All of that stuff is not relevant anymore. But we're not there.
And perhaps processes would need to be more formal in terms of these are the steps in interviews anyway before that can happen. I don't know. Like you say, people will pick up the phone and ring their mate anyway, and I don't know if we can stop that in the same way that in a city job where they use recruiters in the kind of formal capacity to make those hires. Ramy, what do you think?
I'm quite torn, actually, because I probably sound contradictory now, but I think if you go purely based on CV, you'll have a lot of CVs. So, back in the day, my CV had a lot of quiz credits, and I was trying to get out of quiz, but I had rent to pay and I had bills to pay, and I couldn't afford to wait for the perfect job. So if you went purely based on my CV, what you find is a lot of quiz, which is great, because I loved working on quiz shows. It's some of the best times of my life. Shout out Rob Dean, my man. So I think so I'm kind of torn about it, really, because purely based on credits, then you come to that stage where it's like, well, all he's done is Eggheads and The Chase and The Cube. But so he's done 6 months there, then he's done 3 months there, but I didn't have the luxury to wait for the perfect gig because I had too much, I had bills to pay.
So why would having your sort of name and details blanked out have helped or hindered?
I think, well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I understand that there needs to be some sort of sense of you're going purely based on credits, but because we're in a creative industry, you don't want to get to the stage where you're sort of draining all personality from the application almost, and because we are in a creative industry, so it's a really sort of tricky one. And again, I don't really know what the correct answer is.
I think I was thinking about this one just before I came on the call today, actually, was that I think something that should be considered moving forward, and that I think would really help this process, is being somebody that has to crew up on all the shows you do. You're the first person who gets the phone call, you get brought on board, and your time frame is tiny to try and then crew up a series. It's tiny. Sometimes it can be a week before you're supposed to basically employing a whole team. Of course, you pick up the phone to people you know. There isn't really any other choice, because you actually physically do not have enough hours in your day to meet enough people to interview everybody that you would like to. So I think moving forward, what would really help, if there was any way of being able to do it, was bring some of the senior, more middle management like me on towards the end of a development project before something's greenlit. Even if you're only bringing them on for a day a week, it doesn't have, it could be a part-time situation. Even if you're only paying them for hours of their time, to start being involved in the budgeting, to have a look at it, to talk to the broadcaster, to talk to the network, and also to start looking at hiring. And by doing that, even if that project doesn't end up coming off, sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, but you are then creating a situation where you've got more time to be able to make the right decisions, and to put the right team together. To
try and get ahead of the game. And also it almost becomes part of the feasibility cell of it, I suppose, when you're almost at that green light, and that reassurance that, look, here are the people that we have, we've got some CVs or names together. So we often get asked that from companies who are saying, we've nearly got something over the line, we just need a list of people or some CVs, to put to the commissioner, who wants to know who's going to make this. If they sign off on it, who's going to make it? And I mean, to be honest, that in itself is chicken and egg.
That's pretty painful.
But and also we can't just pull together CVs like that, because we do a lot more work than that. It's not a case of just that. And obviously once the CVs are with those people, then that's theirs. So we pre-interview and all sorts. So that's hard. But also there's no guarantees that those people will take the project if they're not offered the project. And that becomes complicated too. But I really like that thought, Emma. I think having people on board much sooner to think ahead of all these things, and actually you could put in protocol for better hiring practices, and to be able to consider people from all sorts of backgrounds and circumstances, rather than, like you say, this is a can you start Monday. we can't necessarily do that, or we can shoot out an ad to as many places as possible, but how can you possibly field absolutely all of them in that short time frame and give everybody fair consideration?
There's no way of being able to do it. And I think, if flexible working is to be a way forward and something that everyone should discuss, don't look at these blocks of time in budgets as being 6 weeks, that's 6 weeks. Don't look at it as a pool of money. And how can you distribute that money? How can you make that money, spread it over a longer period of time? Sometimes the difficulties you have in production is about timeframes. It's not about the amount of money in there. It's the time that's been given. So bring that forward, bring that forward and talk to people about working part-time, doing 2 jobs at once, all of that sort of stuff. That's things we should all be considering, certainly at that middle level role, so that we can then make the hiring practices better and the working practices of everybody better.
Yes, and you're just so much more prepped by the time you come on, bang, for the whole shoot or whatever it might be. Someone here is asking, hi, Andy, thank you for the question. Do you think that flexible working will help companies be able to employ people in the nations and regions without having to set up office? Perhaps teams will be spread across the country. That might be the new normal, and to get the best talent. I mean, Ramy, how do you feel about that, being based in the nations yourself?
Yeah, I think I don't see why you couldn't have a mix of people from all over, and especially when it comes to, for casting, for example, I think it definitely makes sense, instead of shipping people from London up to Manchester to cast for a talent show or whatever it is, or look for a family. Why not have a Manchester local who you can easily connect with? That just makes more sense to me.
I mean, budget wise as well, right? And exactly. Also I think Rosie and I were both talking about how this feels so much more normal now, doing video calls. I think, in terms of saving money and time, there will hopefully be a lot more opportunity to video interview or video meet or connect with a team that's based everywhere. I think it has made the world feel a lot smaller, and I think that may be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Let's have a look. Who else? We'll give it 5 more minutes, guys. So any more burning questions, tap us up now. So yes, lots of people agreeing with you, Emma, about the time frame being really tight for hiring, and that if there was any more flexibility on that front, we could get more, much better people considered from all sorts of backgrounds. Max Bourne is saying, hi, Ramy, the chase, time of our lives. Any more thoughts? So Cara, hello Cara, any thoughts on how to make shooting more flexible? I don't know in what sense there, Cara, but how I don't know whether during coronavirus it's something that maybe a separate session that we're going to do actually, is looking to trying to set something up where people who've shot right now can tell you how they have done it. I think that might be probably more relevant to that question. But Tina Curley, hi Tina, thanks for saying hello. Do you think the COVID budget cuts will affect the amount of regionally made programmes? Interesting question.
It's a very good question. I don't necessarily think so, because I think ideas are still coming from the regions. There are still sort of the few commissions that are getting away. I've seen evidence that they are coming from the regions, a lot of them. So I don't think that will necessarily have an impact. I think it's the sort of the wider conversation is still, we're not quite sure what the landscape will look like. But I do think that but companies will still be looking for the right ideas at the right prices. So I don't think it'll have necessarily a detrimental effect on the regions. I worry about a lot of the small companies in the regions, but ideas generation wise, I don't think it'll have too much of an effect, I hope, because we've still got Deborah Dunnett, who is based here at Channel 4 in Glasgow. So there are still commissioners based in the regions and the nations that are wanting localized ideas.
And also there are still targets to hit. They're not going to change those targets and those quotas, so those will stay the same. So I don't actually think it will. I don't think it'll make much difference at all.
Yes, and Sarah Mann has mentioned something positive actually that may come out of this. She says, as someone based outside of London, one thing that's potentially positive to come out of this is that regional barriers have been removed and the conversations and skills development sessions have been available nationally rather than traditionally in London for networking and learning. And she hopes that this is something that will continue. I mean, I agree. I think, there's a lot of things, even like us doing this, which has been such a joy. I feel that there are things that have been set up that have broken down all the barriers of entry in terms of accessibility, and that we hope to continue for a long time. And it's something we feel really strongly about too. It almost feels like in some ways that some things have leveled the playing field a little, and I feel it's been a very humbling experience, I think, for everybody being at home with dogs and kids and husbands in the background, to see people in their home setups. I actually feel closer to some of our clients and our freelancers, having video called them and seeing them with their own chaos happening, that perhaps we all see each other as humans more.
Yeah,
than
there is a lot
machines.
to be said for that. I think you, well, and we're all talking about how to make it easier to leave the office at a certain time to do what you're doing, or to to go and live your life, or to go and see your children, or whatever it happens to be. And isn't that going to become easier after this because of that whole connection that we've had to each other's homes and each other's houses in this way? That's a good thing. I'm really, when I do a job, I'm really passionate about talking about my family, talking about my home life, talking about what goes on outside of my life, because I want my team to, and I want them to feel able to be able to say it. You have to be the example for the people that are working for you, to say, look, this is okay. This is how it should be. This is how it is.
Okay, so that's one big positive we can take away, hopefully, when we get working again, that we should feel we have the license now to be ourselves, to be honest, to say, I'm going home now because of this, or how's your dog doing, since that incident in the park, Ramy, or you've got to go, don't forget, Emma, you've got to pick up Ethan. It is a very different time that's exposing us all in different ways, I feel. So, okay, just to kind of wrap up then, do we feel, what are the positives that we can take out of this in terms of sort of the return to work, or flexible working, or being honest about ourselves? How do you feel we can inspire everyone watching, even if it's just the solidarity thing? And do you have any thoughts that people could be doing or should be more confident to do or say once they are working, or even now while they're sitting at home?
I think before all this started, the be kind thing was suddenly huge. A lot of us have been campaigning for that for a long time. But I think that this has really brought that to the forefront, that being understanding, being kind, being accepting of everybody's situation, whatever that is. And I really think that's going to drive forward, not just in our industry, in our lives, in our world. I really want to hold on to that. I think our sense of community has become bigger, despite the fact our worlds have suddenly become much smaller. And I hope that stays with us in the post-COVID climate.
Yes, so it's not all forgotten like that.
Yes. And I'm positive that more content will be made. Never has there been a desire for more content than there is right now. Yes, it's going to be hard to make it. Yes, budgets are going to be small, but we're going to be craving it, and people are craving it. So television and entertainment will be made. It's just about us now trying to find a way to make it.
Yes. So being creative, keeping thinking, keeping connected, all of those things. Ramy, any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, just exactly that really, but also sort of be braver as well. Be, have the sort of strength to say, do you know what, actually, what this has taught me is I want to see my kids growing up, or I want to see, I want to go to that cinema. I don't want to miss that theatre show. I don't want to, do you know what I mean? I've got stuff to do. So it's about, be braver in your convictions, and also, there's just something to be said about just being able to stand up for yourself in a way, because without freelancers, the TV industry collapses. So, we hold the cards in a lot of ways. And so, I'm not sort of saying, it's a socialist revolution, but what I am saying is that there is definitely space for people across companies and across the board to be working more more in collaboration, more in a way that they've ever done. So yeah, just kind of, basically exactly what you guys have been saying. But I think sort of have the strength to sort of stand up and say, do you know what? It's sort of 7:30 now. I want to go home and eat my dinner with my family. and sort of not have to feel guilty about that, because
Yes.
there are ways to do that, because we've all seen that we can wake up at 9:25 and be on Zoom at 9:30 and still get the work done.
Or get up at 5:30 because your little one has got you up. So you may as well just get working or whatever. No, I think all of those messages are so important, and I know it's very hard for everyone out there who isn't working and is anxious about the way forward. I get that we're all, in a very fragile state, but if we can try and take away from this, then that, being kind to each other, both in workplace and, at home and in society in general, being braver, not undervaluing yourselves too. Like I mentioned before, if you do get offered contracts, just be open, but stick to your rate. Let the company negotiate, but don't let them whittle you right down. You're going to be working really hard. Everybody knows that. So as well as standing up for yourself and about what you want and what time you're going to leave and what your commitments might be. And that hopefully we can look forward to more collaboration, regionally as a team, whether that's from home or for people who can't, get into the office or have other accessibility circumstances, and that hopefully we can try and cling on to these elements of this very difficult situation as positives and introduce them into the workplace when we're all back smiling together. But it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you never want to be the troublemaker. You never want to be the one kind of angry in the office. But you know what? Fuck it. Life's too short. Life
is too short. Look at what's happening around us right now. Life is too short. Just do what's right for you and be kind.
Be kind.
God, that sounded like an outro of some cheesy chat show.
It sounded like Jerry Springer. It's lovely.
Well, look, thank you so much, both of you, Ramy, El-Bergamy and Emma Taylor-Hill. It's been so nice talking this morning. It's so lovely to just bounce these things around in the public forum where freelancers who are feeling the pain right now and other production companies who may be watching are kind of also just wanting to feel a bit of love and honesty about our industry right now, that we're all thinking the same thing, we're all talking about the same stuff, and we're here carrying on. And if any of you guys want to see any of the other sessions that we've done previously, we've done ones on setting up an indie, we've done ones on working with on-screen talent, on the making of Five Guys, all sorts. They're now on our website for you to view. So if you go onto the talentedpeople.tv website and on the TP sessions page, they're all on there. So if you've missed the beginning of this, we'll put it on later on, so you can kind of gosh, if they really want to listen to us waffling on again, you can do. But thank you ever so much everyone for watching. You guys stay safe and healthy and keep smiling, and let's all stay in touch. Okay, thank you ever so much. Bye. Bye.